SOS, SOS, Mayday, Mayday. Captain, the ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough. The gas tank almost empty, no electricity. The oil pressure reading low. Shall we abandon ship or shall we stay on it and perish slow? We don't know, we don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. Da 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 da. Kaiso, Kaiso. Welcome to another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. As per usual, grab your popcorn, your drink of choice, your beverage of choice, a glass of wine, a cup of tea, cup of coffee. Don't forget the Kool-Aid for the kids. Carry the kids with you. Get your notepad and your pencil, your pressure pill and your hard pills if you need them, a notepad and a pencil, your tablet, whichever one. Call your neighbor, call your friends, call your auntie and your nenen, call your mama and your papa, your grandmama and your grandpapa, your nieces and your nephews. Let them all know that Simon Says is on. Buckle down, buckle your seatbelts. We'll be right back. Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode. Well, it's been a while since I have to bring relevance to the statement between a rock and a hard place. And that's where Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell and his administration, and by extension, Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique is sitting. We are sitting between a rock and a hard place. I mean, with real seriousness. I want to read to you a release coming out of the Prime Minister's ministry, and it's from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now, it reads, Ministry of Foreign Affairs clarifies U.S. request for temporary radar equipment at MBIA. Therefore, the U.S. has asked the government of Grenada to store temporary radar equipment or to put down or to plant temporary radar equipment at the MBIA. And this read October the 9th, 2025, St. George's, Grenada. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Export Development confirms that a request for the temporary installation of radar equipment and associated technical personnel at Maurice Bishop International Airport was received from the government of the United States of America. The Ministry of National Security and Legal Affairs and Foreign Affairs are carefully assessing and reviewing the request in technical consultations in coordination with the Grenada Airports Authority and other relevant agencies. At this stage, the government of Grenada is carefully reviewing the request in accordance with established national procedures. Any decision will be made only after all technical and legal assessments are completed. We wish to assure our citizens that any decisions taken will be guided by Grenada's sovereignty, public safety, and the national interests, including the protection of our tourism industry, the traveling public, and the country's economic well-being. Folks, we await a final statement from the government of Grenada as to what's taking place with the request and, of course, our answer. And most citizens are waiting with bated breath. We have the supporters and surrogates of the NDC all over Facebook cursing the President of the United States, F-sharps, bad word, calling him all sorts of derogatory names. When the administration, the NDC government has not yet made a statement on what they are going to do. And it's just crazy stuff happening out there. They said they're thinking about it. And that's where we are at the moment, right? As I said, we are all waiting with bated breath to hear what they have, what's their conclusion. But where is the Prime Minister? Where is Prime Minister Darius? Our minister responsible for national security. It seems like whenever he leaves, when he takes off into the clouds, no matter what happens on island Grenada, and I'm speaking about the tri-island state here, no matter what happens, he has to finish his trip, he has to continue, he has to move on. And then when his trip is over, he comes back. And even then, he says nothing to us. Why is it this gentleman couldn't cut his trip and come back to Grenada and speak to the nation? All sorts of national town hall taking place with a set of nonsense, which we'll come to in the next episode. Huh? He can't be here to come back with us and let's know he is the Minister of National Security. But of course, in a document that came out lately from pollster that they hug up tightly after before and during and after the last election, who said that they would win, who said all the right things they wanted to hear. Today, he's being cursed off again. Now, because they don't like what they're hearing. And one of the things he said is the poorly run ministries by Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell. But then I told you that last week, didn't I? In Simon Says. And one of his ministry is the Ministry of National Security, which, with my guest, Mr. Tafawa Pierre, which he plainly said on that episode or in that episode that the Prime Minister, the minister responsible, is bad for national security. And he made no bones about it. He's bad for national security. The Prime Minister in the release put out by the Prime Minister's office says he would be back on the 18th of October. And is that, like it or not, there's nothing to bring him back here before to come and to give us some kind of comfort, tell us something, right? The sad thing about this is it is him, that Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, who have us in this mess, talking such a crap about interlocutor. As I always said, be careful, little mouth, what you say. Be careful, little mouth, what you say. It is coming back to bite all of us in our butt. I tell warning you. Mouth open, word jump out. Now, here's a clip, I think it's compliment the GBN on the prime minister out there in Venezuela. And I might add that his surrogates, the members of the NDC and their people, when the political leader of the NNP told him that instead of minding his business here, which we have so many issues, that he gone Venezuela talking about being interlocutor. They said she lied. They said it was fake news, that the prime minister did not go to Venezuela. But here's a clip with him in Venezuela recently. That is what the political leader of the NNP was speaking about.
Big tonight, Grenada has offered to facilitate a dialogue to help ease the growing tensions in the Caribbean that has arisen with the deployment of U.S. forces in a U.S.-declared war against drug trafficking. Venezuela believes the deployment might really be aimed at seeking regime change in Caracas through military pressure. Many countries in the region have expressed concerns about the growing tensions. A Grenada statement in St. George's Wednesday said that given the current heightened tensions, Grenada is offering to be what it describes as a willing interlocutor and facilitator for peaceful dialogue. Diplomatic sources say Grenada has reached out directly to Caracas and Washington on the issue. Grenada said any further flare-ups could destabilize the entire region. Calling the waters the lifeblood for fishers and inter-island traders, the government stressed that safety and freedom of movement remain paramount. While acknowledging the threats posed by illicit maritime activity, Grenada said the solution lies in stronger regional cooperation and lawful action, not confrontation.
It was you, Prime Minister, who told the world that you were the marketing agent for Grenada.
So as the Prime Minister of the country, it is my job to be the chief advocate for the beautiful tri-island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And the only way to do that is to leverage me and the office of the Prime Minister to ensure that we can get investors, we can get people interested and talking about Grenada. So with all due respect to the Grenada Tourism Authority and all the advertising, I am the biggest seller of Grenada. So when I go to Nigeria, I'm representing Grenada. Nigerians who never heard of Grenada would have heard of me as the Prime Minister. They would have recognized that I met with perhaps one of the most, if not the most influential person, not just in Nigeria, in Africa, in the black world. And the attention that has brought to Grenada is what you will see following therefrom. So when
they're hopping African countries again. Apparently he went to the EU. According to the release, they told us he's going to the EU and Ghana. My sources told me that there is a pit stop for Nigeria in there, right? So where are you now, Prime Minister? Where are you now? We need you home. We need you back home, Minister of National Security. We're in trouble. We're in big trouble. In the meantime, NDC is also in trouble, according to pollster Justin Penn. And I told you guys, I want to do quickly, some snippets of Mr. Penn. Let me get my glasses here. In his document, it's what you could say a fairly big document, and for me to be able to read the entire thing, we'll put it up on the site for you to look at, so you can go through it on your own. But he says here, the writing is on the wall. Psychological implications for 2026 to 2027. The data paints a clear and a cautionary picture for the National Democratic Congress political trajectory. Public goodwill towards the Prime Minister remains high, but increasingly conditional. A growing share of the electorate continues to admire his charisma and communication style, NDC supporters, while simultaneously doubting his administration capacity to deliver or on tangible outcomes such as infrastructure, utilities, and the social services. Moreover, modeling forecasts that is, if these weaknesses persist, the government steady state performance equilibrium will decline from 37.4% to approximately 34% by early 2026, while the Prime Minister's personal likability rating is expected to stabilize between 63 and 65%. This would create a 30-point gap, a dangerous divergence between perception and performance that historically signals electoral vulnerability. Once the equilibrium drops below 35%, psychological stimulus estimates a 61% probability that key swing constituencies such as St. David, St. Andrew Southwest, St. Andrew Southwest, St. Patrick East and West will pivot towards the opposition bloc in the next election cycle. And there are more. Carriacou, St. John's, there are more. So then let me skip off some of these here. He went on to speak about the Prime Minister's performance, right? And he's saying each ministry has a performance score, the percentage showing how well it's doing, and a state of probability, which shows how much influence or weight it holds in shaping the government's overall image. Well, he's the brightest star. He's the only adult in the room, really, when it comes down to it. And we know that all the rest of them are all depending on him to win their seats for them. Now, the higher the probability, the stronger its impact on how the public judge the administration on a whole. Right. So now, what the numbers tell us, the Prime Minister portfolio of ministries, infrastructure and physical development, raw performance, 37%. Normalized probability, 0.09. Performance category, weak. Public utilities, 35%. Normalized probability, 0.07. Performance category, weak. Civil aviation, 32%. Normalized probability, 0.7. Performance category, weak. Transportation, 33%. That's performance percenter, 33%. Normalized probability, 0.07%. Performance category, weak. National security, 31 performance percent, raw performance, 31%. 0.7 for normalized probability, state probability. Performance category, weak. Home affairs, 36%. 0.08 in state probability, normalized state probability. Performance category, marginal. Public administration, 39%. Normalized state probability, 0.09. Performance category, marginal. Information, 67%. 0.16, normalized state probability. Performance category, strong. Disaster management, 34%. The normalized state probability, 0.0. And performance category, weak. But are we surprised? I've been telling you, he cannot manage 8 ministries. And him not being here on the ground for the most part. He's in transit for the most part. He's always in the clouds. He cannot manage. And when he leaves, these bulk of ministries are added to, well, it used to be Handies, and he can manage MIT, and he's given him all these other ministries. But now it's Minister Lennox Andrew, who has a bulk of ministries as well that he's not managing. Agriculture is at an all-time low on island, and that's the main pillar, right? These ministries, other people have to watch it for him while he's away. And that is why we in the mess we in with the Cliff Road project. Because when he turned his back and went, Andy said, this is my chance. He gave the right away, they okay to the PS and so, sign up on it. And we know the rest of the story. He took the bribe and we know the rest of the story. This is just a drop in the bucket from that document. But of course, all of this came, it's like breaking news from yesterday to today. And I thought I would give you an update on it. As I said, we put the document on our site and on YouTube. And so you can go and access the document there. But there's no surprise there. There's no surprise there at all for me, for you, the Simon Says listeners. I only last week I showed up some of the ministries, including infrastructure and national security and so on this program. Education. We did. Right? It was on the narrative. When I was still on the narrative, I pointed to you before the elections that bunch of persons vying to run this country is incapable of doing so. I didn't put a bag in my mouth to say so. I said it. And that's where it was from then. The hate for Jenny Simon came. Because I just pointed out the truth. Most of these guys, I knew them. I sat around tables with them. I knew of their competence. I knew what they were capable of and not capable of. Right? And I said it out. I hate to say this, but I'll say it here. I told you all so. They're a bunch of novices. None can help the other. And then you are asking us to give them a chance. Give them a chance as though it's play away. Give them a chance to play with the lives and livelihoods of persons. Give them a chance to play with an entire country. This is not down below the house where you're playing kukute. This is real lives and livelihoods. We're asking for a chance. Will you take an airplane? Would you travel with an airplane knowing that the pilots, the captain and the co-pilot, are rookies? Will you? Would you say, let's give them a chance? Would you give them a chance with your lives? And if you travel with your family, with yours and your family lives? No. No, there are certain things you don't hire people to learn on the job. No. And they have failed miserably. And it's time that we, the people, say that we have lost confidence and trust in this NDC administration. It is time the people take the streets. Like we're going to call NDC to help us take the streets. Because, we normally, before you turn around, we would be on the street. Folks, think bad. Calling it saying E bad. E real bad. Oh dear. And we always left alone with some minister I wonder why, I wondered why the Prime Minister left back the Minister of Foreign Affairs this time, so that he could take the pressure. He could feel the weight of the repo. And coming to, speaking of incompetence and being capable, Ron Redhead, I think it's time this guy stops speaking on behalf of the administration. He is the PRO of the NDC. Tell us what's going on with NDC. When is the next convention? Where y'all is meet? Where's y'all headquarters? How often do y'all meet? How involved is the Prime Minister and the leader of the party with the party and its executive members? You all have a say? Tell us those things. These are the things we want from the PRO. Don't get into economics and those things. We know that you failed your ordinary little courses you went down to the university to do. You failed. And we know that you try to cheat your way out of it. Stop it. He was on to the point on Wednesday. You're talking a set of crap again. Things that don't concern him. Stay in your lane. So Ron Reddit, after 3 years and some months of his Deacon Mitchell-led administration, in his capacity as PRO of the NDC party, thought it necessary to inform the nation that the NNP did not leave the $500 million they said they left, or they found in the treasury when they entered office in 2022. He said that is not true. They have said before that they've made plenty money in the treasury and that they didn't have to borrow monies to pay the retroactive pension. And the doc salary that they sprung on us, well, it was sprung on the cabinet members as well. Even the Prime Minister said to himself, it was just him when he was presenting his cabinet to us in the stadium. And he said it there, that even there, the cabinet did not know that he decided to pay the doc salaries to the teachers, right? Where did that money come from, Ron Redhead? Even if, and then the Prime Minister in the campaign, he said that even if he had to borrow money to pay the pension, the retroactive, and the pensioners, that he would do it if he had to borrow, because at the time, I guess he was assuming that there were no reserves, right? Now let's hear, now remember Ron said that they did not meet the 500 million as was said before. Because as a matter of fact, this figure, we never heard it from the NNP. This here came from the NDC on entering office. NNP never came out and said, yes, they're going to meet $500 million. No, they never said it. It was you, the NDC, that said you met the money there. Now, here is the now acting Prime Minister, Minister Lennox Andrew, in the Parliament, telling us, the people, that they met plenty money when they took office.
It is true, Mr. Speaker, that when we came into office, we met plenty money. Right? And the CES had plenty money.
Now, let me get to you Ron's statement. It's short. Get my glasses here. Now, here is what Ron Reddit had to say. It's essential to conduct thorough research. The fact of the matter is he didn't even take his own advice and do a thorough research before he opened his mouth and Tata came out. The claim of leaving 500 million in the treasury simply does not exist. According to the official information from the Ministry of Finance, the total revenue at the end of June 2022 was only 63.6 million. Moreover, the overall balance at the end of 2022 has never supported this false assertion. And if you look on the screen, you would see how Ron Redhead came attached to his utterances there, how he came up with that conclusion of 63.6 million, you know, $63.6 million. Now, with authority, he spoke in assertion, right? It is essential to conduct thorough research. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. The thing is, though, to date, we've heard nothing from the Minister of Finance or the Ministry of Finance to say plainly that Ron Redhead don't know what he's talking about. They just left it like that. So who believe. But Ron Redhead, as I said, did not take his own advice and research. What he did was saw a budget document, didn't understand it, and thought, I catch them. I don't know if he went to anybody with any kind of economic and financial skills. Now, this is someone you need to teach financial literacy. And forget the rest of us out here who are trying to bamboozle to buy your bonds. Now, what Ron saw, if you look at the screen, was the revenue collection by major divisions and under total revenue for June 2022, 1 month, you know, the actuals, the amount was $63.6 million. Just let me repeat this. Total revenue for June 2022 on the actuals, the amount was $63.6 million. Now that is the monies Ron and his administration are saying they met in the treasury after they boasted that they found $500 million. Now, the $500 million that they boasted of was savings, reserve, right? Reserves. Now, anybody, please call Ron Redhead to the front of the class. We need him up front. Revenue is the total monies, total income a government collect from various sources, primarily in taxes, used to fund its public expenditures. So you collect taxes, you pay salaries, you pay your bills, etc., etc. Government savings is the portion of the government's revenue that is not spent on expenditures, also known as a public savings surplus. Now, for those of you who are not quite sure who Ron Redhead is, Ron Redhead is a guy who stole a vehicle loaned to him by someone kind enough to help him during his campaign in 2022 elections, and he sold it for less than half its worth to a gentleman who paid him the check. You see, after the campaign, he asked the individual who lent him the vehicle if he can keep it for the use in the constituency. And she told him, yes, for $18,000. A vehicle that was valued at $35,000. So $18,000. Nice and kind. Ron sold the vehicle for $10,000. Early, off the bat. Right? $10,000. But the only thing is, he couldn't transfer the vehicle because the vehicle is not his. It was not on his name. It doesn't belong to him. And that is how the owner of the vehicle knew that her vehicle was sold. This is who we're talking about here, Ron Reddit, who's speaking on behalf of the government. This is what we have to do. And again, what have we done to deserve these things? Ron should have been removed from the cabinet of Grenada ASAP when this had happened, right? He was kept. He was kept. Now, I've told you this story time and time again, so you know the story and how it ended up. Eventually, the gentleman who bought the vehicle for $10,000 sold it for $32,000. Yeah, but there was supposed to be a deal. I don't know if it was carried out, but there was supposed to be a deal with Ron's advisor and the gentleman who said, well, you know, we're going to sell it for you for $10,000, and whenever you sell it for what, you know, we'll cut the fits, I guess. This is what, and this thing has continued throughout this administration with these people. He was fired in January, and that's Ron Reddit, was fired in January of 2024. And we were told by the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, the reason being, so he could continue his studies. Let's hear.
I also indicate that the Honorable Ron Reddit, who held the position of Minister for State with responsibility for youth, sports, and culture, will demit office as a minister, and he will remain, obviously, as the Member of Parliament for St. George Northeast. Minister Reddit is doing so that he gets some time off from ministerial responsibility to pursue his academic and educational pursuits. We obviously take the opportunity to wish him well in this. We anticipate that in the not too distant future, he will conclude those academic pursuits and would be in a position, if he so chooses, and if the Prime Minister's agreed, to have him rejoin the cabinet.
So he was fired and given a full scholarship to attend the St. George's University, SGU. A scholarship from the government of Grenada, a contract with the government of Grenada, which is illegal for a member of the parliament, an MP, to receive. And you can check it out in our constitution, according to section 31, subsection 1, on the disqualification of membership of House of Representatives. And then you can go to read E of subsection 1 and subsection 6 of subsection 31. It defines what is a government contract as spoken in the paragraph E. And then we have, you can read subsection 6, subsection 1 of subsection 6. It is illegal. But he was given the scholarship. And so it's a bunch of them inside the parliament that are there illegally. Dennis Cornwall, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, Andy Williams, now Philip Telesford. Yeah, they are there illegally. But those are stories for another time. Those are stories for another time. We have an election around the corner. And so a lot of these things, because these are things the electoral office was, if they did due diligence, these individuals would not have been nominated, would not have been nominated to be candidates in the last election. To continue, Ron Redhead failed his courses at SGU. First of all, he was accepted in a master's class when he failed his bachelor's degree in that same institution, that same SGU University. This time around, his grades were changed from F to P for pass, and from F to C. Now, that's the Ron Redhead that is telling us about 63.9 million is what was met in the Treasury. The question is, why wasn't the Minister of Finance or the Ministry of Finance telling us this 3 years later, and almost 3.5 years later? Now let's get back to the matter at hand. Now, what Ron Redhead displayed and spoke of was the reporting of the government against its budget for any given period. He displayed in June 2022 the revenue performance, which was monies collected in that specific month of June 2022, which has nothing to do with savings, which does not reflect on monies in the bank or what was collected for the months or years prior, right? That report just said and showed revenues collected for that specific month, June 2022, that specific period in time. So it cannot be associated to savings. He also displayed the 2021 budget versus actual collections and in 2022, which basically shows what was budgeted for the year and what was collected or spent for the year. It has nothing to do with saving. It measures what has happened relative to the budget for that year, which is the target and your actuals. What was actually spent? Now that has nothing to do with what is in the bank account as at any particular point in time. Mr. Fail is mixing up budget outcomes for a given period with savings. But are we surprised? No, he saw June 2022 and he was like, yes, that's what they had in there, 63. It's sad though. It's really, really, really sad that we have to go through that. And bam, it's up in social media, it's on Facebook. As I said, he mixed up the budget outcomes for a given period with our savings. Now, Mr. Fail has been a parliamentarian for at least 6 years and counting. First, in the upper house after the 2018 elections, He was a senator, one of NDC. Although NDC won no seats, the GG still allowed them to, I think it was two, the space for two senators. And they had sent Ron Redhead and Karine James. So he did, I think, 2.5 years, almost 3 maybe, in the upper house. And then now he's in the lower house. So almost 6 years experience, budget experience, and you still don't understand a budget statement. You still don't understand a budget statement. And you're trying to achieve a master's degree. Revenue and savings are two very distinct things. What you're seeing on your screen there represents cash investments in the ECCB sinking fund in excess of $36 million, almost $37 million. And in the JP Morgan, in the USA, investment, US, $7 million plus cash investment that has been drawn, that can be drawn down at any given time, right? Now, this other document shows cash investment that was sitting in the banks in Grenada at the same time, a grand total of $404 million plus. So it's almost $4.5 million, $404.5 million. And that was at the 31st of December, 2021. All bank balances, if you look, you see all the bank balances there. You can see that. At the end of December, the 31st of December, 2021, a total of almost $405 million sitting in the bank in Grenada as savings. My dear Ron Redhead, this is what you met there. This is what your minister, Lennox Andrew, was speaking about when he said, we need plenty money in the Treasury. This information was submitted by Philbert Charles, the then Accountant General. Now, on June 2023, by June 2023, there goes your 500 million run, together with the sinking fund and what was in JP Morgan. And of course, this was by the end of December. So by June, there goes your 500 million that you guys got to pay off retroactive pension. Now, Ron said they met 63 million, right? The retroactive payment was $75 million. And they didn't have to borrow, unless they borrow and they didn't tell us. It was $75 million. So that was not enough to even pay the retroactive. They also paid 1.2 million in doc salaries to the teachers. And God knows whatever else they spent the money on, because it disappeared into thin air. You know, like a child in a candy store. Now, according to Ron, they met 33.9 million. That, as I said, could not have paid the pension and the doc salary that they paid off. But then, according to the head of the Youth for Change, Kem Jones, on the Ride Along program, he said, and that was before Ron came up with his grand idea, he said they didn't meet 500 million, so it's been something in the making for NDC. because elections are coming up and they're trying to find something to hold on to. Imagine, as I said, 3 years later, Kem Jones said they met 341 million in the treasury. So which is the figure? 341 or 63 million? Between the two, y'all, figure out, and the NDC administration, figure out which amount was met. But let me tell you, the people of Grenada, they met 500 million in the treasury. They can't even focus on a fake story together. Fake news, and it's wrong. They're not even in the same place. And the Deacon Mitchell-led administration are quite comfortable allowing Ron and Kem Jones and their likes to openly and publicly mislead the nation. So vulgar, so sad. I want to move quickly to Kawana Bay. Folks, on March 16, 2026, True Blue Developers Limited was incorporated. April 2016, the company submitted an application for the development of the flamboyant hotel and villas, which they purchased. Mitchell and Co.'s was part of the representation. In May 2016, Cabinet approved the project as a CBI project, allowing them the authority to raise 52.5 million US dollars or 150 approved citizenship. Multiple requests was made for an increased budget by the True Blue developers, ranging from 99 million to 100, and these are US dollars, to 110 USD, and that was between 2017 and 2020. True Blue Bay developers raised 56.1 million US dollars in passport sales during the period of request for variations and investment. Due to the many variations, the then CBI unit commissioned a review of the financials and the project costings, doing due diligence, and nothing wrong with that. And that is what, after all the mistakes made in the earlies with the CBI project, the CBI program, the administration then started to tighten their nuts, right? Nuts and bolts, we're talking here now. And so, so they asked for a review, right? The then CBI unit, as I said, they commissioned the review. An engineering report was also done in 2021, which highlighted that the construction cost was 47.4 million USD. A review of the financials dated April 30th, 2020, prepared by PKF, showed that 18.5 million EC dollars was invested by the developers, and 90.4 million EC dollars from the True Blue development was given as a loan to another company unknown to the CBI unit here outside of Grenada, called True Blue Services Limited. So in other words, the developer took almost 100 million EC dollars from the True Blue development, right? And loan it to another of his company outside of Grenada called the True Blue Services Limited. Take note of that name, the True Blue Services Limited. So Warren Newfield of the True Blue development he was a developer, took our monies from our CBI unit and gave it to another company called the True Blue Services outside of Grenada for another development outside of Grenada. And that is why, and that is where the breakdown happened between the cabinet of Grenada, because we know these once the investments, and so it has to be signed off by the Prime Minister, who is chief in the cabinet of Grenada, right? And that is where that breakdown became, and the whole the True Blue, the Kawana Bay project then was on go slow, and they had issues, and eventually the developer. Now, in May 2021, a letter was sent to the True Blue Development outlining the findings, and by June 2021, the company filed an arbitration. So they vexed, they didn't get what they wanted, they keep asking for more money. Not the work on our project slowed down or stopped at eventually. The money is sending outside of Grenada, and we shouldn't say nothing, we should just let him do it. So he decided to take Grenada. He filed arbitration with the International Court because they were refused other monies request. Now, after the 2022 general elections, the Deacon Mitchell-led administration bargained with the developer, agreed to pay him $22 million US dollars, though his equity was only 18.5 million US dollars, and claiming they saved us millions. Right? Now let's hear what the Prime Minister had to say on that.
I come last week to the Kawana Bay site. This site formerly housed the hotel known as Flamboyant Hotel. And subsequent to the closure of the Flamboyant Hotel, was transferred by the government of Grenada, not via leasehold, which is what Flamboyant Hotel had, but via freehold to the development company True Blue Bay Development Limited, which is the company that created the Kawana Bay project and had an approved CBI status for that project. As the nation well knows, not too long ago, the former administration led by Dr. Mitchell and the developer Kawana Bay had a very public and unfortunate falling out. And this led to the developer taking the state of Grenada to arbitration before the International Court for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, known as, in short, ICSID, and sued the state of Grenada for several tens of millions of dollars. And the site became a white elephant. The construction ceased. The site was closed down and it has sat there for the last 2 years or more. Upon assuming office, the government took the decision that we could not simply allow perhaps what is one of the most spectacular sites on Grandlands Beach, and certainly the most spectacular view, to become a white elephant dominating the landscape at that end of Grandlands Beach, Monterey area. And so for a protracted period of time, the government, first led by a cabinet-approved committee, and I want to stop here and signal our gratitude to that committee. The committee was led by Mr. Richard Duncan, and it included Ms. Leslie Ann Sion, Mr. Hassan Hadid, and Mr. Henry Joseph. They led the negotiations initially to try and see how this matter could be resolved. And I want to thank them for the time and effort that they put into this matter, because although it was not resolved under their watch, specifically, they certainly contributed significantly towards advancing the matter. In summary, the government made the decision to acquire the site so that we could, in fact, put ourselves in a position to have fresh negotiations with a new developer so that this project could, in fact, be completed successfully, so that construction could resume, so that several hundreds of Grenadians who were once working on the site and who became unemployed as a result of the construction site closing could look forward to resumption of work on the site, to resumption of employment and ultimately to a hotel actually being completed on the site. So the government has acquired the site. It has acquired the site at a cost of 22 million US dollars. We will be making the necessary payments between now and next year to the main owner of the site. The result of this is that the arbitration proceedings between the developer and the state of Grenada has come to an end. And we are happy to report that because the legal fees associated with defending the ICSID arbitration was running the people of Grenada into the several hundreds of thousands of US dollars, if not, it had already reached millions of US dollars in legal fees for a dispute that we felt was certainly not necessary and one that was created and should never have happened in the first place. Having acquired the site, the government is currently engaged in significant and advanced discussions with potential developers over their taking over the site to resume construction. At this stage, we have not yet concluded a definitive deal, but we feel quite optimistic that we would be in a position to come back shortly to announce the conclusion of this definitive deal.
Now, a few things here. First of all, I explained to you why there was that breakdown in relationship with Mr. Newfield and the government of Grenada. He was taking our monies and loaning it, as I said, to another company outside of Grenada, and the project was happening outside of Grenada while our project was going at snail pace and eventually stopped. Now, let's not forget as well that the Prime Minister's law office was already also tied up in the mix, right? He knew all about it because he was in the mix then, right? Then the hundreds of workers, construction workers, still not on the job because no development has happened post the time of the financial problems. The applicants who were approved for the 56 million US dollars, the investors through passport sales, they were not a part of the $22 million that Mr. Warren Newfield received from the government of Grenada. Now, unless Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell and his cabinet know something that we don't know, unless they're magicians, they don't know that the government and people of Grenada would not have won the arbitration. And all indication shows that we would have won. But they give the gentleman $22 million, take that and go, right? And swap it for the Rivera property on the beach, which only I think was valued at allegedly some 16 or 18 million EC dollars. Yeah. Right? Now, that building, the property, is still standing as a white elephant on the Grandlands Beach. What they say, the prime spot, the most prime spot on the Grandlands Beach, our world-renowned Grandlands Beach. Yes, to date. So all the nice talk, the blah, 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 we know way better. But with 22 million poorer and more to come now, because at this stage, this whole Kawana Bay thing came back up because the Prime Minister spoke about it on his DMDPM. We'll come to that, right? Now, the Prime Minister was asked about, then when they spoke about the 22 million, what about the investors? The ones who paid, well, from the sale of their passport, the CBI raised $56 million. What about those? And this is what he had to say.
I'm confused there again with your response, Prime Minister. The investors, the smaller investors, not the developers, the investors who got passports in exchange for the investments that they made under the Citizenship by Investment Program, are they exiting? Are they being compensated and exiting the project as well? Are we getting this project totally and fully without any of the previous, the developer, the investors, everybody's out?
Yes, the simple answer is yes. When you acquire the property, you're acquiring the interest of anyone who has a property interest, and that would have included any of the investors who would have been granted a condominium interest in the property.
So they are being reimbursed the money they paid for the passport.
It doesn't work that way.
So
The way
explain it
works
to me,
is,
please.
It's a property acquisition. Whatever money you made from an investment point of view is a risk that someone takes. If you, as a result of your investment, that's a matter between you and the developer. As a result of your investment, the developer would have contracted and would have deeded you a condominium interest or a unit interest in the property. Then the acquisition would have acquired that. That's a property interest. And if any compensation is to be paid, it would be in relation to the property interest. But just like any other investment, if you take an investment, let's put it this way: whether or not the government acquired the property, anyone who had up to our acquisition invested in that property, what would they have had? An interest in a abandoned, closed down site. We can do an assessment of whether that's an investment or a loss. But essentially, what we've acquired as a property, and anyone who has an interest in the property would have an opportunity to present any claims for evaluation of their interest in the property and to be compensated accordingly.
So according to the Prime Minister, at the end of the long talk, the investors, once they can present their claims, would be paid, would be compensated, in his own words, would be compensated for the investment. But Cynthia daughter, the brightest AG on the planet, even sitting next to the Prime Minister and hearing his explanation, came back after the Prime Minister spoke and trying to pull wool over our eyes, reiterated that the only monies they would have to spend or spend is $22 million US. Here is Cynthia daughter.
Just to clarify for the listening public that the state of Grenada was sued for $111 million thereabouts US in the Kewana Bay dispute, and we settled the dispute for 22 million, less than a quarter of what we were sued for. And in the arbitration claim, there was not a claim in relation to the property as such, because the property was still owned by the True Blue developers. So in the settlement, we were able to get the property back for the people of Grenada and settle the arbitration dispute. So that encompassed the 22 million. Just so that people understand, the 22 million just did not only cover the value of the property. It was to settle all of the claims made against the people of Grenada or the state of Grenada, that totaled $111 million. So I would say that was a good deal for us.
You heard her, to settle not just for the property, but all the claims made, right? She came back, after the Prime Minister to tell us that, right? Now the monies, the $22 million was only to the developer, Mr. Warren Newfield. It was only to him, and that's a fact. To date, Kewana Bay still stands as a white elephant on the best spot on prime property, the world famous Grandins Beach, lands this Deacon Mitchell administration most proudly reclaimed. Folks, On Tuesday, the 30th of September 2025, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, on his podcast, DMs the PM, in answer to a question on Kiwanabe, and I still am baffled about this question and how precise it was. And, it's as if you were told, the individual was told, look, ask the Prime Minister this question so that certain things would come out. Let's hear what the Prime Minister had to say.
In light of unresolved investor concerns regarding Kiwana Bay, will the government consider compensating affected individuals under the contribution option of the CBI program, even without registered deeds?
Well, I can't answer the question in a definitive yes or no manner. What I can point out is that currently there is a process by which anyone who claims, any investor who claims or alleges that he's due compensation as a result of the acquisition of the property by the government to follow a particular process. There's a portal, your claims are lodged either by you or your legal attorney, and then the matter is being treated with by the Attorney General and her office. Cabinet has given instructions to pursue settlement for persons who do in fact have a registered title, so that we can hopefully come to agreement on compensation and pay those. It's a lot different for persons who did not have a title, because all we did was to acquire the land, right? The nature of investment is that it always comes with some risk. I don't know that if it's guaranteed, then it can't be an investment.
That's true.
So basically, the investment comes with some risk. As you would appreciate, when this government got into office, the site was closed. There was a huge arbitration proceedings between the developer and the government, and nothing was happening. I don't think investors in those circumstances could realistically have expected that anything was going to happen in terms of the project or the investment. What we've sought to do by acquiring the site is really to find a way to move the project forward. And as we said, for persons who have registered title, we are in the process of treating with their claims. We're hoping that we can have negotiated settlements on those issues. For those who did not have registered title, or title for that matter, then it means from a legal perspective, you are not an actual owner that the government has, whose title the government has taken. So I think obviously we'll have to deal with stage one first, which is the registered owners, and thereafter perhaps on further discussions, further determination as to whether or not persons who don't have title would be eligible for compensation.
As a lawyer, they all are eligible for compensation. He knows that. It's just a way of dragging us, kicking the can down the road. So in other words, the Prime Minister is now telling us through that question, right, that they are in the process of compensating the investors. That is outside of the $22 million that Tinty daughter stressed that's it. So, everybody covered under the 22 million USD. No, it's just, why can't they just be honest? Why can't they just come and tell us what's going on? What's all this rigmarole, as my mother used to say? Eh? Now, all the investors into Kiwana Bay project had an agreement with the developer. And that is factual. All of them had an agreement. Don't ask me how I know. I know. They had an agreement with the developer. And they also had title deeds. And that's something I question. I'm like, the project didn't finish. How are they holding title deeds? But what it was, the agreement was because it wasn't a building being built from scratch. Remember, Flamboyant was there, and they had what they now call condominiums, right? So it was a matter of renovating these buildings. And so the developer didn't sell shares. The developer sold condominiums. They sold properties. And so that is why, according to the Prime Minister, some have deeds and not all title deeds. I don't know why all doesn't, but have or no have, these people have to be compensated, all 214 of them, because that was the nature of the agreement. Remember, Kiwana Bay was the existing Flamboyant hotel. So the Prime Minister has just confirmed that we are now paying the investors, and it is going to cost us more than the 22 million USD. So the chance we took, did it pay off? And especially now when we broke, had to go and had to pay that kind of money. Huh? All we doing is spending money. Nothing coming in back to us. We just spending. We spending on overruns. We spending on botch projects. We spending on actuals access in excess of $2 million in travel and entertainment by the Prime Minister in 2024. Minister Andy overspent $17.8 million in 2024 and already in excess of $12 million for 2025. But the Prime Minister is always gone. Where is the bacon? What has he brought home to the table? In fact, as we speak, he's gone. He's been gone to return on the 18th of October 2025. When will he make another visit to Grenada? Here is the Prime Minister as he was sightseeing on one of his visits to Grenada.
I said we've constructed more drains, retaining walls and culverts in 6 to 8 months than I've been doing in 150 years. The next step is just to scrape and do the road. I have 2 things to stop. I'm not so sure why we...
The Prime Minister said he's built more drains and culverts in St. David in 6 to 8 months than was built in 150 years in St. David. I mean, how much more desperate can one get? And as he's just passing through, you know. This is while he visiting Grenada. You know, he went a little sightseeing in St. David's. 150 years. I mean, come on, folks. In less than 100 days in office, the new government of Trinidad and Tobago, headed by Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, secured a $94 million grant from China, almost $100 million in less than 100 days in office. Reported Friday, the 26th September 2025. What has Deacon Mitchell brought home thus far? Millions of dollars in travel, excessive in 3 years. And we have nothing to show for it. What has he brought home to us? So the $22 million to the Jew man, Mr. Warren Newfield, was that a kickback? and brought us as saving us. Right now, we need saving from this administration. Was that a kickback? The question remains. Because we now start to spend money. And what we get for it? What we have to show? He right up, Mr. Newfield, right up into the sunset with his 22 million. And we here still spending money. We kept the debt. Let's move on to Project Polaris. What's supposed to be their savior turns out to be a hot mess and a scheme, a Ponzi scheme, as I once told you. Project Polaris, named after the North Star. Now, we have to give them that. They're very good at names. They have style, fancy names. Although they barely use the names after they put it to us, like the best program, like what's CBI now? There's another name they give, but all of them still refer to it as the CBI. I don't even remember what MRA, something, because nobody uses it. Everybody still says CBI, right? The fourth Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum was held here in Grenada on the 28th and 29th of July 2025 in St. George's, hosted by the African Export-Import Bank, Afri-Exim Bank, and the government of Grenada. At the opening of the Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum, outgoing Afri-Exim Bank President and Chairman of the Board, Professor Benedict Orama, announced a number of transactional investment across the Caribbean, with Grenada at the center of the bank's regional strategy. Here is Professor or President Orama on Grenada's $250 million loan.
Here in Grenada, we are co-financing a world-class tertiary hospital, estimated at the cost of about $250 million. Which we hope will convert the country into a regional hub for medical tourism.
Okay, for those of you who the accent wasn't clear enough, I quote, here in Grenada, we are co-financing a world-class tertiary hospital estimated at a cost of about USD $250 million, which we hope will convert the country into a regional hub for medical tourism. Then at the close of the Afri-Exim Forum 2025, the Afri-Exim Bank published a press release dated the 8th of the 8th month 2025, captioned Active 2025 closes with over 300 million in deals and bold commitments to integration, mobility, and investment. Now, in that document, they named all their investments and the countries they loan money to: St. Kitts, St. Lucia, Bahamas, I think everybody, except Grenada's Project Polaris. Nowhere to be found in that document. And that's when you start to say, oh, something is not adding up. No mention of Grenada's Project Polaris. $250 million loan. What happened? And our government, the silence is deafening from them. And this $250 million they're very silent on it. They're begging all over the place now and not telling us what happened to that $250 million. It was a joyous occasion. The celebration started from the minute the gentleman was not yet off the stage, of the platform, when the party, the NDC party, started to celebrate, right? And then things started to disappear. They started to pull down the flyers, which proudly said in a flyer posted by the NDC administration. Well, the NDC party, as a matter of fact, it quotes, outgoing chairman of the Afri-Exim Bank, Professor Benedict, has just announced at the Active 2025 conference that the Afri-Exim Bank will fund Grenada's new climate smart training hospital to the tune of US 250 million. Title Project Polaris. Hashtag promise made, promise kept. Hashtag Grenada Healthcare. But before the night of the 25th was over, that the 25th of the 28th, sorry, of July was over, the release came down. And we never heard a thing about the promise made, promise kept again. We never heard what happened to the 250 million US dollars from the Afri-Exim Bank. Now, I'm not sure where promise made, promise kept fitted in this whole scenario, because did the president of the bank say since the coming of the NDC that they were going to give us this money? Or did NDC tell us before this that we were getting $250 million? So where is the promise made, promise kept slogan? Why is it attached to that money? Anyways, after that, all sorts of begging started taking place. The Minister of Finance announced on the GBN to the Point program that he went soliciting in the Middle East and that he was able to get monies for Project Polaris. We heard nothing further of that. Then we heard of the members of cabinet giving up 1 month's salary annually towards Project Polaris. Real kukute. Then they've asked citizens to give towards Project Polaris. Whoever can afford it, whatever you can afford, in a GoFundMe. And then they ask us to buy bonds to fund Project Polaris. In other words, price in our own fact. The question remains, why a medical city if we can't afford it? In the meantime, we are paying Mount Sinai Hospital out of Manhattan, New York, 2.5 million USD annually for an affiliation. 18,500 EC dollars a day out of our consolidated fund. And we still do not have basic medication, materials, implements, and equipment at the hospitals, at any of our hospitals or our clinics. In the meantime, Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, one of their hospitals has shut its doors. The Mount Sinai Beth Israel Hospital has closed its doors after 135 years of serving the East Village community. The closure, sanctioned by the state's health department in July of 2024. The closure came after a prolonged legal battle to keep the hospital open. A court case contesting the shutdown was dismissed, ending an era for Mount Sinai Beth Israel. leaving East Village residents seeking alternatives. Then in an appearance on the talk show, the project sponsor of Project Polaris, Ms. Andrea St. Bernard, told us about Project Polaris and its affordability to the ordinary man.
Talk about that. And I want to start off with a question about why Project Polaris. I understand the fact that our health sector is an area of challenge currently with all that is happening. So why have the government identified that as a particular transformative project for the country?
So I think, you started with it. Healthcare is a significant challenge in Grenada for all of Grenadians. And so I guess the government took time to consider what would be the things, projects that we could undertake that would have the greatest impact for people, make them the most impact in bettering lives of Grenadians. And healthcare really is at the top of that list. There's, I think, no secret that there are significant challenges across the healthcare sector, and there's no one problem, and there won't be one solution. We have a long-term problem, which is multifaceted, and we need to have take a very serious look at the full spectrum of the problems instead of trying to look at one Band-Aid at a time, and come up with a plan to actually improve the healthcare service and delivery in Grenada. And so we understood that you have to start somewhere. And so we begun Project Polaris, which I'm not sure if you have an idea or know the story or the genesis behind even the name Project Polaris. And we came up with the name Project Polaris because it signifies the North Star. Okay. And so we said, it's not that building the hospital will fix healthcare. It's that we have to have a goal and an end point so that we can start the journey to get to where we want to be. And so the hospital and the building of the hospital became the North Star, where we could say that's the point at which we will have built better institution and infrastructure, and we should also be able to deliver better healthcare. And so there's several aspects going on at once that will lead us to, over a journey that will take us years, a point at which we can boast good healthcare in Grenada.
Right, reading up on your...
But how are we going to afford Project Polaris when there is no further word on national health insurance? The program abandoned by this Deacon Mitchell-led administration on entering office. When asked about the cost, this is what Ms. St. Bernard had to say.
This is a 250-bed climate smart research hospital, 260 million, I think. It's going to be the capital cost. So it is going to be a significant cost for us in our economy, a small size economy. I noticed that the first phase is going to be the hospital part that is going to take 10 acres of the larger space. How is the financial engineering going to meet that cost? Through loans, through CBI? What is the thinking here for us to meet that kind of capital outlay?
Right. So the initial budget for the construction of the hospital is $250 million US. It's obviously, that's a significant capital undertaking, and one of the largest that the country will have undertaken. So we are approaching it cautiously, and really very diligently searching for the best possible financing. I guess the first point is the first question you asked, which is why are we doing this? And it's because we believe it's absolutely necessary for the people of Grenada. So this is an investment in health and wellness of Grenadians. But yes, it will come at a cost. We have spent quite a bit of time in, this project has been underway now for a couple of years, and so for a large part of 2025, we have been speaking with potential financiers, and we've gone through a large scope of potential financiers, from commercial bankers to export development agencies. We've also found quite a bit of success in our discussions with highly concessionary lenders. As well as we would also have some grant components, as well as we would also launch a philanthropic campaign and look for donations and expect that with a project of this level of national importance and that instills national pride, et cetera, that we would be able to also launch and have a successful philanthropic.
But the president of the Afrexim Bank pledged 250 million US dollars at the 4th annual Afro-Caribbean Development Forum 2025. And the Minister of Finance, Dennis Cornwall, said that he got the money they needed for the Polaris project in the Middle East. Here is what Minister Cornwall had to say.
Okay, so we passed in the budget this loan appropriation bill, which basically authorized the government to borrow monies for its development side of the projects. For example, the roads, the buildings, and whatever infrastructural type. Because as part of the financing or funding of the budget and so on, we needed to show the populace where those monies are coming from. We talked about raising some extra monies on the stock exchange in the Eastern Caribbean. Yes. We also said we go after looking for funding at concessionary type loans to build our capital aspect of it. And so far, we have gone ahead and done a lot of work behind the scene. In fact, one of the major projects that we have coming up would be the hospital project, that is smart hospital project in Calivini. And so we have been on the road for the last couple of months, talking to who matters out there to basically make sure we can actually get those monies and so on. And as I mentioned earlier on, we are well on our way to get that monies. In fact, last week while I was in Vienna, I also met with the Arab Coalition group, which includes Kuwait, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, and other countries, where we are basically interfacing with the institutions to see if we can raise the monies that we need to make that hospital happen. Yeah. And while we are still having a few fine tuning to go, we should be able to announce before the end of the year that we have sourced the monies, and this is where we are going with it.
All right.
Now, this project Polaris is at what cost to Grenada? What cost to Grenadians?
Challenges with our current health system is the cost to the average Grenadian in terms of how affordable it is. So, we don't like to pay for things when it comes to health care, and, simple blood tests sometimes causes issues. With NHI, which is supposed to help with that, how is NHI going to harmonize with this as we come to, getting the hospital up and running and resourcing it so that it is affordable yet still, but it must pay for itself? You're
starting with all the right points. NHI is just absolutely necessary. So it's one of the pillars that will, the success of Project Polaris, the success of better healthcare in Grenada will depend upon. We need to find a way to have universal health care, some level of universal health care. So the government is committed to implementing national health insurance, and it has to be ready in time and be a part of the collaboration and the work stream that is the bringing about of Project Polaris.
So you're
What NHI? Where is NHI? NHI disappeared off the radar since they came into office. Your government, Ms. St. Bernard, canceled the agreement with the company out of Florida, JIPA, an agreement that you met on entering office in 2022, an agreement that was well on its way, putting the national health insurance on its way. You'll scrap that, and we have heard nothing since about national health insurance. When asked about the upcoming election and the risk of starting a Project Polaris, or should I say trying to start a Project Polaris, because they've been talking out there, according to Minister Cornwall, but it didn't look like nobody listening. It looked like nobody listening. So they came back to us to help save the day. Right? This is what project sponsor had to say.
Opening now, you're breaking ground in 2026, and you expect to open and have boots on the ground between 26 and 28. So hopefully by 2028. So isn't there a risk associated? Elections is due in 2027. The government may win or they may not. Is that poses a risk to the project in terms of its completion or its building out?
I sincerely hope not. I sincerely hope that everybody agrees that this is a project of such importance that we should pursue it at all political angles, whichever way. Because this is not the first time that Grenadians have dreamt of a better hospital and better healthcare. And certainly what I can say is this is the first time such significant strides have been taken towards achieving that. And in the time that Project Polaris has been working, I can truly say not just the significant strides towards making the partnerships that we need for the guidance, making the plans that we need for the design, for the development, purchasing the property, and actually ensuring that we have secured the space and the environment around. There are significant strides being made to make sure that this is a reality for Grenadians. And so this is beyond politics. This is about Grenada and making a better healthcare for Grenadians.
One of the challenges we have with healthcare currently is resourcing, whether it's human resourcing or resourcing for equipment, the right kind of equipment to give the right kind of diagnostic testing and so on. How does the project plan to overcome those challenges?
Now, when asked about the affordability of Project Polaris, when it comes to the ordinary Grenadian, since Project Polaris is branded as a tertiary hospital. Now, tertiary hospital is a high-level, a high-end hospital, right? Which provides specialized medical services for complex or severe health conditions. Now, that's what they're advertising, a tertiary hospital. Typically, after a patient is referred from a primary or secondary care, tertiary hospitals often advance diagnostic specialized intensive care and access to subspecialists and high-tech equipment for treatments like organ transplant, complex surgery, or high-dose chemotherapy. Now, lest we forget, the president of the Afrexim Bank pledged the monies to Project Polaris, a tertiary hospital.
Here in Grenada, we are co-financing a world-class tertiary hospital, estimated at the cost of about $250 million. Which we hope will convert the country into a regional hub for medical tourism.
Now let's hear what the sponsor of Project Polaris, Ms. Andrew St. Bernard, have to say on Tertiary Hospital.
Literature describing Project Polaris talks about healthcare for Grenadians by Grenadians, but when one looks at the scale and specialization of a tertiary medical city as is described, and I use the word tertiary hospital because at the pronouncement by the African Export Bank, when they indicated that $250 million was approved, they talk about a tertiary hospital. And I'm thinking tertiary meaning your third level, you have primary, secondary, and tertiary, the highest level, which requires a serious specialization and specialization at all levels, specialization in terms of technology, specialization in terms of staffing and accommodation and everything else. So my question is, doesn't it look more like it's built primarily for foreign patients? That's a concern.
So No, it's not being built for foreign patients, not at all. So you started by saying you were looking at our literature, but you went on to say that you were heard from the Afri-Exim Bank. So I think you may have gotten the messages convoluted. The hospital that we're building is a replacement of the existing general hospital. So first and foremost, it's going to offer the services that the current general hospital offers. When we began the early concept discussions, from the very first start of discussions, and right through to now that we're into the actual design of the hospital. It starts from the position of, and the base document is, what are the clinical services that we need to serve Grenadians? What is necessary to best serve the healthcare needs of Grenadians in a secondary hospital, the general hospital that we need for Grenada? So that clinical services plan went through quite a bit of consultation within our own hospital, our own general hospital, management, staff, etc. It's then gone on to consultation with our strategic partners, etc., so that we can understand not only what are we offering today to make sure that we offer always at least what we're offering now, but also what are the additional things that we need to add to best serve the population that we have and the needs of our population. That's the center piece. That's the core of the planning for all of the hospital. So from day one, when the hospital opens, it will have all the clinical services of our current general hospital, but delivered better. Delivered in a better institution with better standard operating procedures, with better service quality. And I say that because we've already begun to work on a system that will deliver us better quality and better service of healthcare. But absolutely, there's no doubt that the core of the hospital and the planning of the hospital is based on a clinical services plan that will serve the population of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. What we also know, however, is that we have many of the same problems and challenges as our brothers and sisters in the region. And so if we build a top healthcare institution delivering the services that the population in Grenada needs, then we would also be offering top healthcare service to the problems and challenges of our neighbors in the region. And therein lies the opportunity to invite them to also get a good healthcare. But the starting point is, what do we need to do to offer the best possible healthcare to the population of Grenada?
So in testing my understanding, and thanks for the explanation, the pronouncement by the president of the bank in saying that a loan of $250 million was approved for a tertiary hospital, was he wrong in this statement? Is that false?
We have had some discussions with several potential financiers. I would call it an expression of interest in the project, because we have not finalized or any of our financing sources.
Because so this announcement is premature, but when I also understand details of the hospital, as was discussed in various literature, I see accommodation for staffing, accommodation for patients. What aspect of the hospital is being designed for, when I say outpatient, patients from overseas, like an offshore patient facility?
No, as I said, what we're building is a hospital that serves the needs of the population of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, first and foremost. It will be an excellent hospital. It will be a world-class institution, and it will offer good healthcare. And through achieving those goals, which we've set for ourselves, we will attract patients from the region and beyond. And we believe that that's an excellent model to then offer a business opportunity that helps with the sustainability of the cost of offering good healthcare to Grenadian people.
You envisage with this approach the closure of our existing general hospital?
Yes, eventually.
Busted. I don't know where they got the idea that the rest of us on this island are dumb and stupid, and they could continue to fool us. So all of a sudden, Project Polaris is a secondary hospital, right? Because the question was put to Miss Saint Bernard in public. She was exposed. And I do believe, Ms. Bernadette, you are the confused one. They are exposed that that project is not about us, the ordinary Grenadians. Though the lands were bought with our monies, and though 2.5 million USD is coming out of our consolidated fund, our monies, to pay Mount Sinai to use their name, and though over $400 million was given to them from the 2025 budget, we, the people, the ordinary people, won't be able to afford or to access Project Polaris. And they still coming to us with a GoFundMe account and trying to bamboozle us to purchase bonds, our own bonds. So which is it, Miss St. Bernard? A tertiary hospital or a secondary hospital? Is Miss St. Bernard genuinely confused, or is she just trying to confuse us, the people? Now, when asked about Mount Sinai's involvement, hear what Miss St. Bernard had to say.
You envisage with this approach the closure of our existing general hospital?
Yes, eventually.
Okay, excellent. I want to talk a bit about the Mount Sinai partnership, because this is very much, I understand that this is costing, it's an ongoing arrangement costing some 2.5 million US dollars annually. What exactly is Mount Sinai's role? Are they investors, trainers, manager, or simple lending their brand? What exactly is this arrangements? If you can explain, please.
So there are a few different arrangements that we have with Mount Sinai. The first that we entered is, in fact, the one, and the first engagement that they began with us is the one that's ongoing at the General Hospital. That is a quality improvement initiative that's meant to improve the service of quality.
So when are we going to see the benefits of Mount Sinai? When are we going to get our money's worth? This is a lot of money. 2.5 million USD per annum. Then came the big one, the question of staffing. The big question, how are we going to staff Project Polaris when we can't staff our little general hospital on the hill in Granite Town Road? How are we going to staff Project Polaris?
That is that the existing general hospital is going to transition into the new general hospital, which means the patients that are there are coming over to the new general hospital. It means the medical professionals that are there, they're coming over to the new hospital. And we are going to do everything that we need to do to walk the path with them to get to better services, better standards, better policies, so that when we get to the new hospital and we open the new hospital, it's not just a better institution. There are better structures, procedures, practices, policies in place. And the general hospital staff are working quite diligently now. In fact, it's the highlight of the work that we're doing now, is to hear the regular updates of things that are happening at the general hospital, and the work that's being done, the energy, and just the general good feeling that something is being done. And I think that has been a very special movement, and it continues. So,
Byron, go ahead.
Staying with the, and I want to continue along this line, the question of staffing and capacity. Some time ago, the Minister of Health, was talking about the staffing shortages at the General Hospital. At that time, he counted it as over 100, including technical and other staffing. So he clearly indicated that already short on doctors and nurses and specialists. If we can staff what we already have, how do we staff a cutting-edge hospital of this nature? Are we anticipating Or how? Let me leave the question to you to answer. How do we anticipate staffing this new facility? What's the thoughts on this?
So again, this is something that is a significant challenge, and it will take a multi-pronged approach to solve for the problem. So first and foremost, we're starting with upskilling, working with making environment better, all the existing healthcare professionals that have been making the sacrifice. And so we've got a good base to start with. We know that we have to recruit and train more healthcare professionals. So again, it's the planning. So as I said, we started with a clinical services plans. What are the services that we need to give good healthcare to Grenadian people? Well, working with our strategic partners, the next question was, what do we need to be able to deliver those services at the highest levels? So we have an understanding of what is the building and institution and infrastructure and technology that we need to be able to best leverage what we have. But then we also have built into that, what's the HR plan that we need to deliver those services? And that is a very ambitious plan, because to deliver world-class healthcare services, you have to have a lot more healthcare professionals than what we actually do have. So there is a significant gap. But there are things that can be done to bridge the gap. So we'll start training, and we have to look very closely at what are the areas that we're educating, how are we educating. So we definitely have to start looking closely at, again, will we have a nursing school? What's the best opportunity for us to train more nurses? Is it through our collaboration with SGU? Is it going back to a national nursing school? These are still things that are under consideration that will become the next big push as we move forward with the overall plans. We need to essentially do an assessment of what do we have and where do we need to go. What are the upskilling and training that we can do for any of our existing professionals within the hospital? What are the new recruits that we need, and what are the new positions? Because it's not just doctors and nurses, it's allied healthcare professionals, as you said, the technology component. So we need persons who can also contribute and work within the hospital. But this is a wonderful story, because what it means is we're creating really excellent jobs and careers and opportunities for Grenadians also.
A wonderful story, she says. Indeed. Tim. Staff and patient transferred to Polaris. Now, by the time Polaris comes around, we all dead. All. We won't even be able to afford Polaris anyways, because they're not answering the question. Where is the money coming from to fund Polaris, to furnish Polaris? Where are we, the people, going to get the money to access Polaris? Polaris sounds way above the ordinary man's reach. She's not, and she's confused. Miss Saint Bernard, what we have at the General Hospital as we speak is lack of proper health care, materials, medicines, lack of access to scans, to tests like blood tests and other tests, x-rays, etc. We have broken equipment, so you can't get an x-ray, you can't get nothing. Then we have selective operations. What they say, emergency only. But if you can afford to pay the doctor on the side to come inside the hospital and do the operation, then it's not selective anymore. So you have to have money. And if you don't have them, there's nothing like insurance, National Health Insurance, NHI. Where is that? So we're doomed as ordinary people. We're going to die. If you cannot afford to pay, you're going to die. It's not, once you could pay, it's not an emergency anymore. What we have, Miss Saint Bernard, is not enough staff according to best practices. What are we transferring from General to Polaris? What? The host, Byron Campbell, still confused. Pressed Miss St. Bernard further.
There's still a bit of, let me explain, a bit of confusion in my mind. Let me tell you why. So here we have a situation that, as I understanding and listening to you, that Project Polaris is designed to move Grenada's healthcare services to a new level. And that's understandable because we all agree that the present one that we have is wanting and it's inadequate to meet our current health needs and certainly for the future. So a project of this nature, as you describe, is desirable. There's no question about this. But as you describe it and we look at the literature and we look at the design, we see that it not only is designed to replace what is called our general hospital, our secondary healthcare facility, but also to provide facilities for, I call it offshore tertiary facilities in some regards, because the project talks about accommodation for overseas patients. It talks about facilities for staff, in terms of housing and so forth. So there's other aspects to it. And the question is there, for you, is there a danger that this new, and it also talks about high end in terms of the most modern technology, high end. I mean, so we're moving significantly to a new dimension, so to speak. So is there a danger that this new medical city, so to speak, as it's described, will drain resources away from the public health system rather than strengthen it? What assurances can you give to, for us not to be thinking this way?
So it's a comprehensive and fulsome plan. A lot of the aspects that you've just identified are in fact part of the plan to make it sustainable, to build revenue. So what I mean by that is what the government of Grenada is committed to building is a hospital to serve the healthcare needs of the population of Grenada.
250-bed hospital.
The 84 acres that the government has secured, what we are planning to do is build a medical city. We're calling it a medical city, but it's really a commercial platform. Medical city because it will have additional medical services. We are planning for, and we're actually in the process now with our master site planner of planning out the 84 acres. And it's actually a lot of fun. It's quite spectacular because you can see it start coming to life. And so I definitely will want to come back shortly to show you some of what is planning out. Because the 84 acres, that is where we expect that there would be, and so we're coming to a point where we'll have even better renderings because we've now actually gone through the process of doing the site planning and the early concept design based on the topography and all of the studies that we've done. But beyond the actual hospital, which is primarily to service Grenadian population healthcare needs, we have the medical city beyond, which is a commercial and revenue opportunity, investment opportunity. The government of Grenada isn't using its money to build the medical city. We're inviting investors to come and build the medical city. This is the most dynamic investment opportunity in Grenada. This is, again, built on the cornerstone of a new, smart, climate resilient hospital which will offer excellent health care and which will be branded with an international name brand. We believe we can attract medical tourism as a product now for Grenada. And with that proposition, the opportunity for the traffic into the medical city, into a hotel, which the government of Grenada isn't going to build the hotel. We're inviting our partners, our investors to come and build a hotel because we've got a beautiful site. We're planning it in a most spectacular way. And we know when we build a hospital that's offering excellent care, the best care in all of the region, people will come, their families will come, and it'll just be another reason to visit Grenada.
Now, sometimes it's good to press. What we've learned that the people are building the hospital. So who's building the rest of the village? Who is the we Miss St. Bernard is speaking about? or speaking of, when she said, what we are planning is to build a medical city. We're calling it a medical city, but it's really a commercial platform. Bingo. She continued, a commercial and revenue opportunity, an investment opportunity. So it's clear. Talks of a brand new hospital is just a mask to cover up the real scheme, the Ponzi scheme I told you guys about months ago. Stop deceiving the people. This is nothing but another get rich quick scheme for the chosen few. Project sponsor, project lead, affiliation, 15-year agreement signed. Nothing but a gigantic Ponzi scheme. Let me tell you what a Ponzi scheme is. A Ponzi scheme is a fraudulent investment scheme that pays returns to early investors using money from new investors rather than from profits generated by the business. It's named after Italian businessman Charles Ponzi, who used this tactic to lure investors. The scheme often misleads investors by falsely implying legitimate business activities or by exaggerating the profitability of these activities. In essence, the scheme relies on constantly recruiting new investors to sustain the illusion or profit and pay returns to existing investors. Nothing but a Ponzi scheme. Grenadians are wiser than that. People, it's our children and our grandchildren that will be on this piece of rock when it becomes Little Haiti. Grenada will be left penniless and loaded with debt while these guys ride off into the sunset, laughing all the way to their offshore banks. And we'll see nothing like what is being shown in that video there. Picture. We have to stop it now. We have to stop them now. A better Grenada is possible without them. Months ago. Now, common signs include unusually high promised returns, lack of transparent investment details, and pressure to invest quickly, like the financial literacy training by the bonds. Now, added to all of that, I am hearing from very credible sources that no feasibility study was done by the administration on Project Polaris. And I'm asking here, was the topographical survey done? Was a plot plan done? Concept plan? Preliminary plans? Where are we with all these things? We're not hearing anything about that. The more I follow Project Polaris, or the dream of Project Polaris, the more I feel lost. How about you? As it stands, this Deacon Mitchell administration cannot even afford to maintain a debushing program. We are covered in bushes. We cannot afford to pay our ancillary staffs at the schools, the cooks, the cleaners. We have endless unfinished projects, roads, bridges, schools, build back better houses, unpaid contracts, and service providers, failed programs as a result of lack of funds. We have no primary health care. We cannot afford to furnish our hospitals. They are understaffed, under-equipped, and with very limited medication and materials. We have had a bust 2024 budget and had to borrow $875 million to sustain the 2025 budget. To date, we are operating on a deficit. This multi-million-dollar Project Polaris was put in the hands of 3 individuals called the Delivery Unit. It's made up of Ms. Andrea St. Bernard, the project sponsor, Mr. Damian Darland, the lead consultant, and the Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry for Finance, Ms. Chevron Britton Telesford, as Permanent Secretary on assignment for the Delivery Unit. The 3-man Delivery Unit for such a magnitude of a project. Andrea St. Bernard's appointment has ignited a firestorm of controversy, fueled by her role as the treasurer of the NDC and her cozy relationship with the Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, and his company, Mitchell & Co. Her past and ongoing connection with Henley and Partners in the citizenship program, the CBI program, only adds fuel to the fire. It is now alleged that the Prime Minister channels his CBI dealings through Ms. St. Bernard's agent. So with Ms. St. Bernard reporting directly to the Prime Minister, whose office has no jurisdiction over investment or development, critics question the tangled web. And oh, what a tangled web it is. A web of responsibilities and potential conflicts of interest. The actual purview of investment and development lies with the Ministry of Economic Development, casting a shadow over St. Bernard's appointment. Today, she's given the title Project Sponsor or Project Polaris. Now, a project sponsor is a high-level individual or a group within an organization who provides resources, support, and guidance to ensure a project success. They are typically senior managers who advocate for the project, ensures its alignment with business objectives, and hold ultimate accountability for its overall achievement. The project manager's key roles and responsibilities are to provide resources and support. This includes technical backing, accessory resources like personnel and equipment, and the authority to make decisions that impact the project. A project sponsor is an individual who offers financial resources to fund a project. Here is Ms. St. Bernard explaining her appointment.
Can you explain to me what is a project sponsor?
I'm happy to take that question. So the Project Polaris is the concept of building the medical city. The government cabinet of ministers have created a delivery unit to lead in that project. And the delivery unit consists of myself, who is the project sponsor. And so I am the lead government representative responsible for the project. We have a consultant, which Mr. Damian Darland is the lead of the consulting firm Darasami. which has been our lead strategic advisor with respect to this project. We have also are working with Deputy Permanent Secretary Ms. Siobhan Britton-Tellisford as the Permanent Secretary on assignment to the Project Polaris Delivery Unit.
When we hear sponsor, normally it's this entity or this person is responsible for doing a whole lot of, they are literally the investor behind it. This person is sponsoring. However, in this case, I'm not getting that impression. So I was trying to understand the use of the term sponsor. I could understand you talk about the lead consultant, and so this is pretty clear, but it's the first time I'm hearing of someone being described as a sponsor of a project and is not the person doing the investment behind it. Okay.
So there is no investment component to the terminology being used in project sponsor. It really just means the lead person appointed by cabinet to have responsibility for delivery of the project. It's just the terminology that we've used.
Folks, what is clear is that this Project Polaris is a new economy created by the nation builders to feed themselves, since all indication shows that the CBI well is drying up. We don't need a medical city. We don't need a medical city. We certainly do not need a medical capital of the region. What we need is a proper healthcare system, which includes a functioning primary healthcare system. Yes, we need a hospital. We need a new location for a hospital, but it is not priority now. What we need now is to save lives, to improve on what we have, to fix what we have now. I know you are looking for a big one. You are looking for something, a capital project to hold on to celebrate from the platform on the campaign trail. But lives matters first. Do you have any idea the amount of medications that can be bought with $2.5 million a year? How much material, gauze, suturing thread, gloves, nebulizers, reagents? How many kidney patients can be dialyzed with $2.5 million USD? How many cancer patients can receive chemo and radiation treatments? Instead, it's about getting rich and trying to stay in office with that election ploy. This 15-year agreement signed with Mount Sinai Hospital, paying them $2.5 million USD annually. And that is for the first 5 years. Unless we forget, I think we're forgetting that. Only for the first 5 years. After that, it's going to be more than $2.5 million. And we were told so by the project sponsor. Folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of Simon Says. It's always a pleasure conversing with you, trying to keep them honest. Thank you for viewing yet another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. See you next week when we go back to Thursday. Bye now. Have a good one. Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.